Hello and welcome to CS264 Software Design. This is week 8, and this is the second part of lecture 16. We're working this week on software design patterns. This is an overview and introduction, and we've talked about two behavioral design patterns in detail, and these are the command and memento design patterns. And we had a little bit of an overview on those in the last lecture, or the first part of this lecture 16, and we saw a little bit about these patterns in terms of the UML. I did tell you that you could look at some source code, but they would be very much tied to a specific application. You will know that from lecture 8.04, I've already given you an example of the command pattern, which deals with shapes. And you'll see, here we have the canvas, which is a receiver class, and you'll see it works with shapes. We have the invoker class here, and we have some undo and redo happening. And we have a command class, which was an abstract class, with some concrete commands. So it shows you how to do all of this, and I'm hoping that you will remember this and start looking at some of this for your assignment 3. So what I want to do then is to take this one, which is the Memento design patterns, and give you a fully working code example and talk you through a fully working code example for this one, because we've already done the Memento at some point and I won't review it. It's here, if you want to have a look at it. It will be in the week 08 source code or demo code, which I'll upload, of course, to Moodle for you. Okay, so we're interested in this particular one first, which is my Memento. Okay, and we're going to click through and just look at the program here, and this is it. Okay, so I'm going to talk through this. It's not a particularly long program. It shouldn't take too long to get through it, but the whole purpose of this is to show you the connection between this model in terms of the UML, the application, and the instantiation, the implementation of these classes. We hope that we're going to see the originators, mementos, caretaker classes appearing in our code. That's the point of all this. Okay, so the namespace is my memento, of course, and for this particular one, we're just going to be saving and restoring states. Okay, it doesn't matter what those states are. They're not actually. It's not going to deal with objects. I mean, they're just states. So we're going to use a simple enumeration for different shapes or different states here. Okay, let's change this. It states. I mean, we will do an example that deals with shapes in the next or final part of lecture 16. Okay, so I said this public enumeration called state. We have 4 states. Okay, alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. And so now we need to start thinking about memento class. And if you think back to our notes, the memento class represents this snapshot. It contains the state of some object. And the state of the object is going to be a state object, to be restored to some originator. It provides some get and set state member functions for accessing and setting the state encapsulated by the memento object. So note that set state could just be the constructor, for example, and we could have some other methods too. Maybe we want to get some information about the memento, and itself, so maybe some metadata associated with that memento. And of course, like the date, for example. And of course, we could specify an interface for mementos like iMemento and have all memento objects use that base class. Okay, or we could just have a simple class called memento. And remember, we're interested in being able to do and undo. Here we'll see, for example, we have the state, which is hidden. We have a memento, which is the constructor, which we use to create the state, and we have a get state. So we don't actually have a set state, although we could have as well if we wanted, and we could have other kinds of information in here. The originator, we'd like to see, it also has a state, and it has a save and some restore. So it's interested in working with mementos. And the caretaker is responsible then for the list of stuff. So it has this history of memento objects, okay? And it knows about the originator, okay? And so we do something, and then we can undo something So in order to do something, we can save the state of the originator and push it into history, and to undo something, we just pop it back and restore it. For our example as well, I was interested in this example that I showed a little bit there. Let me go to the slide. This one, I was really interested in this slide here, where we basically have all the states, and we have the current state, and we're able to move back and forth through it and choose some point in time. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So I wanted to look at an application or an implementation that showed you how to do this as well. Okay, so our class then, we have our public class memento, so it has a state, it's private, And it's going to be state objects, okay, or states. They're actually enumerations, of course. And we have our public memento, which creates a state, takes a state, and saves a state into this memento. And in this particular one here, then, we actually have a get state, which returns the state. And that's all it does. Now, we could have a set state as well if we wanted. I mean, we could uncomment this method and have it, but we don't really need to use it in this particular example. You may find a time where you want to do that, but for now, we don't. Okay, so that's our Memento class. A little bit of information that tells you about what that class does. Next is our Originator class. So that class then is quite a bit longer. Okay, it's not too long, just a screen. So that's the Originator class holds the current state. Okay, so it has a member function then that creates and returns a memento object with the current state of the originator stored in some returned memento. So in other words, it takes the current state, creates a memento from that, and returns it. Now, it also has this member function that replaces the current state or snapshot with the state of some given memento or some other snapshot. So that's useful. Now, when we're dealing with simple items here called like enumerations or simple pieces of data, sometimes you see this example with strings, it's easy, you can pass things around. It gets a little bit more complicated when you start working with actual objects passed, and we have to think a little bit about that, and you might see, and you may have encountered this issue yourself. But anyway, so we should have a way of setting the state, so the current state should be possible to set it with a state that's passed to it. Any state that's passed. Of course, we're going to pick this up from later, okay, where we have our caretaker class that handles states and tells the originator what the new state should be. Then we have get state, and that simply just returns the current state, which is here, okay. Then we have a memento, so that create memento, and that of course is the memento class, okay. So this returns a current snapshot, so it returns a new memento of the state, okay. And we already know what state does; it's up here. We have simple, straightforward. Okay. And we set the memento, and that returns a current snapshot, and we have a set memento which restores a snapshot. So we take it from the memento. So that's our originator class, not too complex. The caretaker class, then, that's some helper class, and it manages the storing and restoring of the originator state using the memento object, or objects. The caretaker objects store mementos, but they never modify the mementos. They only just know about the mementos and can store it. The caretaker encapsulates this list of mementos, allowing the state changes over time to be maintained, and the caretaker requests memento objects from the originator. So these are all the tasks. This is what the role is, and this is how it works. So this is all about behavior. Right? This is why it's a behavioral design pattern. So we have our caretaker class, and you'll see that here we have a list. So it's a list of mementos, okay, and called memento list, and we create this new list. Okay, it's not too bad. We look at this list, and of course, in order to be able to use the list class within C#, we scoot back up here. We'll see I'm using the collections.generic library. Okay, so back down to caretaker, and this adds memento to the list, and we use the add function, and then returns a specific memento from that list using an index. Okay. Now we could overload this method and say get, and then we just pull the last one if we wanted. Okay. And but I wanted, as I said, to be able to go to a particular point in time and choose one, rather than just pull the last one that was pushed. We could do that if we wanted, so it just pops the last one off the list because it is a list. Okay, and it's a list T. Okay, so it's the list T class, and we can actually work with this, and the T in this case will be memento objects. Okay, so it's straightforward. Okay, so I think that's easy enough to get. So we have our caretaker class, we have our originator class, we have a memento class, and we have our client class, okay, which is the main class, the application. And it can have many originators and caretakers and memento types as well if you want. But I guess if we go back here, we see our originator, our memento, and our caretaker, and everything is encapsulated in this client. So yeah, I think that's got everything we need. So let's see, how's this one going to work then? Okay, so we have an originator, so we create this originator, yeah, so that's good. That has the current state. We have a caretaker, which is going to keep all the mementos, okay, the different states. So for this originator, then we're just going to set the state to be state.alpha because we have this enumeration. Now we can write out that the current state, we always get the current state of the originator by just saying originator.current state. Then we set the state to beta, so we change the original state. Okay, now you notice that we didn't actually save the state. We just set the state and then changed it. Now we're saving a state. So we're using the caretaker to keep the current state of the originator. So it should save the state beta. Then we set the state to be gamma. Okay. And again, we're writing that state. And we're now creating another one. So the second state that we create, or the first one was state 0, and then this is state 1, and this is gamma. So we have beta and gamma. And then we set the current state to be delta. And we have a look at the current state, so we know the current state should be delta. So we write this. So written to the screen, we should say the current state is alpha, current state is beta, current state is gamma, current state is delta. Now we want to actually get the we want to get a memento in position 0, the very first one. Okay. Now it's not the first one, alpha, it's the first one that we saved, which was state.beta. So we're actually going to be able to set the memento to be this state. We could have done it like this: originator.setState.caretaker.getZero.getState, whatever. You know, there's a number of ways to get to this, which I don't like really, but anyway, this works. So we should get beta here, and then we can get the state 1. Okay, as I said, I've shown you how you can do 2 different ways of doing this. I'm not really a fan of that, but yeah, it works, and it's got to do with my design. And every design will be slightly different, but you know, I don't like generally having 2 ways to do something. I like to be able to do it one way in case we make mistakes. But yeah, that's the code I've written. It's not perfect, but the whole purpose is to be instructive, you know, in terms of so you get to see that connection between the design pattern and the code. Not meant to be the best piece of code, okay? But nevertheless, I'm sure at some point I can get to a point where I write some code that's a good example and also be good code, but you know, I'm away from that yet. Bit away from that. Okay, so I have my second state, and we can see the final state as well. So that's fairly straightforward. So let's run this. Let's create a terminal, run this, and let's pop into my Memento, clear this, make a little bit more space for you so you can see with the program that's running, and we say .NET run. And we wait. Okay, so yeah, so the current state was alpha, beta, gamma, delta, which is what we expected. And then we asked it to save state gamma was the first one. No, the first one we asked it to state was state beta. And then we asked it to have state gamma. Okay. And so we then restored the states. First, we restored the state delta, which is what we did. Restored beta, and then we restored gamma. And yeah, so that was okay. And then the final state should have been gamma, which is here. Final state is gamma. Yeah. Okay, so that's an example of how we might use a program, how we might use the Memento software design pattern in our application to save and restore some states. Okay, so it's like an undo and a redo. It's taking snapshots, restoring snapshots. We had a client program that had a caretaker, and which was responsible for handling all the mementos or the states, and we had an originator, which is the current state, and we had a memento, which actually, you know, encapsulated the originator state. Okay, and so all of these classes match, correspond nicely with our expectation here. Okay. Thank you very much for watching. We leave it there.